Welcome to the Football 360 Show, brought to you live from Gulf Shores. And of course, the beautiful Football 360 Show studios. Me, JP Rock, Matt Beer. Matt, how you doing today?
Doing great, JP. A little loud here on the music, but doing great. We could tell you're in a much better spot than we are.
Joe is a music man, so that's why he likes to crank that up.
Yeah, Joe, the music's just a little loud.
So we're here. Right, we're live. We're live on X. We're live on YouTube, and of course, you can catch all things Football 360 Show at football360show.com. Beautiful Gulf Shores. It's my turn this week to go on vacation down here. Your turn's next week.
Yes, yeah.
I think we're going to try to broadcast from down here again.
We're going to have, I think, back-to-back beach locations.
That's
so
correct,
super excited that this was able to work, and we got a special guest in studio today, BJ Wilson, who is a long time trainee at Elite Football.
Exactly. You got a top position.
Oh, you're cutting out there, JP. We lost JP. So we have BJ Wilson here sitting to my left, and he is in studio today. He's a coach at Elite Football with us, but was a longtime player. And I think he's got a really unique story in his football career, and be great to catch up with him, get an idea of what he's gone through. Nothing is traditional in football.
That's going to happen. So I'm going to let you go ahead and do the. I'm still here.
Okay. All right. So let us know when you chime in when you can. So so today we're going to get on the topic of really just what it means to be a football player in the modern era. And BJ's a guy who, BJ, how old are you now?
I'm 25.
25.
Yep.
So he grew up in the era of non-NIL. He grew up in the era of a little bit of transfer portal.
You got it. Can you hear me?
Yep, we got you. So BJ grew up in the non-transfer portal era. He did a lot of football playing as a young man. And then from there, essentially, he got into a situation where he finds himself being looked at by the NFL. So BJ, we're going to start there, but then rewind a second and get you properly introduced, and let us know a little bit about yourself, and then we'll kind of pick it up from there.
Okay. So we're starting NFL. We're starting.
We'll start high school.
SLU. High school. Gotcha. Okay. So I went to SLU High School. Greatest high school out there. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Go Junior Bills. So I went to SLU. I was a tight end and a defensive end actually when I was at SLU. So
you're a skinny kid.
I was a skinny kid. I want to say about 220. I also played basketball, so that kind of kept the weight down all the time. Splitting my time between the two sports. So when it kind of got around time to start getting recruited at, I wasn't really getting looked at all. But I did end up getting a few looks from some smaller schools in the surrounding area, Missouri Western and then Quincy, the two big ones that were looking at me. And they both wanted me to come through and play tight end. I did have a few offensive line looks when I was younger or when I was in high school, but they were going to be preferred walk-ons. One of them was going to be Northern Iowa. The other one was Mizzou was interested.
So that brings up an interesting point because you're how tall were you in high school?
I've been this height since about 8th grade, about 6'5", 6'5", 6'6".
About 6'6".
Yeah,
I'm 6'6" now.
So long athlete, moves extremely well. That's why he got to play some tight end. He and I were talking last night, and I remember saying, and Jamie saying, hey, you're going to play O-line at some point. But when you're a young guy who's athletic, who played basketball and other sports, like your mind is kind of really focused on like, hey, I can run, I can catch, and being more explosive, maybe at a defensive end or something along those lines. And the tough thing is when you start to project guys, which JP, you and I do often, you start looking at like what their arms look like, what their build looks like. Yeah, you might be 220 today. You're going to be 300 before you know it. So that's one of those things where it is tough. And that's probably why, from a recruiting perspective, we talk about this all the time. They want to see guys that are ready-made, right? They want guys that are the right size. They don't want to invest a lot of time, energy, and money in getting you bigger. Yeah, they'll finish you off, but they're not going to get you from 220 to 300 because there's not a lot of upside for them in spending their time developing you. If, say, an injury occurs or you dislike football or you decide to move and go to a different school. So that happens a lot. So, from that perspective, as you get to college, were you bitter about not getting a lot of offers, or were you pretty content with going? Well, go ahead, JP. We got a little delay here. So, but
I was going to say, they used to do that back in the 70s. They would take a 6'6", 220-pound guy, and over the course of, we do have a delay, over the course of like 4 years, put that weight on them and develop them. But they don't need that now. So they have other options. Right,
and it's accelerated even more, I would say, today because transfer portal, NIL, people are expecting to go right away. So, BJ, you get to Quincy. Are you happy to be there? Are you a little like, because you get there and there's guys of all different emotions and saying, well, I had this and I had that. I could have gone here. I could have gone here. And not to say that Quincy's not a great place, but you have guys that are like, well, yeah, I should be at University of Illinois or Mizzou or Missouri State, whatever it might be. So,
yeah. So for me, the big thing is I was just really excited to be getting part of my college paid for and to keep being able to play sports in college. So I didn't really have that same viewpoint a lot of guys have as of, oh, I need to be at the biggest school. I was getting to do what I loved regardless, and it was helping pay for my school. I always looked at as playing college football as a platform for me to further my education, which ended up being a big thing for me, but it also kind of ended up switching around, which we'll get into later.
Yeah.
But so I was super excited to be at Quincy. I will say you got to make your own fun up there, but I enjoyed every second of it.
That's great to hear because I think it's tough nowadays, and that's a great life lesson because you got to live your life. You don't have to live something that everybody perceives and wants you to do on the internet. And there's only so many spots at these big schools. And say you go to a Division I school and you sit and wait 3-4 years, and then the timing doesn't work, and now you're like, your experience is not the same, right? You don't have the ability to play at the level you played at and experience the things you got to experience, right? So I think, what do they always say? Be where your feet are at, right? Because people can oftentimes, and I'm sure, am I making it up? Were there guys in your team that were constantly talking about other opportunities and things they could have and should have been doing?
Yep, absolutely. And honestly, I've heard that. I had friends that went and played at bigger schools, and it was the same thing. Even at big schools, they talk about, oh, I should be at Bama, I should be at Ohio, they should be at a bigger school. It happens at every level. So, yeah.
Which really, again, if that's going to happen, it's going to happen, right? Because if it's not going to happen, and you're supposed to be at that level, then you're going to stay at that level, right? So, how did your freshman year go? What was your experience as a freshman at Quincy?
So freshman year, I came in. My roommate was one of the guys that they were looking at to be a starting quarterback, and I was a tight end when I initially got to Quincy. And so me and him always working on the field, always trying to get better. At a certain point, he ended up traveling with the team while I got redshirted. And during that time, I actually started getting told by coaches, like, we want to see how you do in this drill. And I'm like, okay, what drill is this? And they put me in O-line and had me start blocking. Okay, tight ends have to block too. We want to see you in one-on-one pass rush. You want to see me in what? Sure. So by the time we got to the end of the season, I was running like half and half on scout team, half at tackle, half at tight end. And when we got into our winter conditioning, that's when they're like, no, you're doing O-line drills. I'm like, okay. I'm going to do this. I'm going to be good at it. So I kind of started putting in extra work on my own time, trying to learn the technique because I didn't have any great run blocking technique or any great pass pro technique back then. That was something I really had to work at, especially because if I was going to play that position, I wanted to play that position. I wanted to start. I wanted to be good at it. And by the time we got to spring ball, I was named the starting left tackle. So
yeah, and so that transition happens real fast. And you made a comment that you hadn't really trained a whole lot for it. So now you're in the deep end of the pool, playing a high level football at a new position, right? But at some point, being a great athlete overcomes a lot of that component, right? So you have a situation where you can use your athleticism, you can use your experience as a tight end and basketball player, and now you can learn at a quicker pace and be ready to go. And so, did you have any particular coaches that were able to help bring you bring you up to speed on the O line?
Yeah, so absolutely. So just a quick point off what you said off the athleticism part. My first rep of one-on-ones I ever won, I got killed. Somebody hit me with an inside out move, or they took a little jab in and went right back out. And I tell you, I spun like towards my inside shoulder, somehow got back in front of them and won that rep. Don't know how, but that was just kind of that athleticism transferring over. In terms of coaches that helped me out, I actually went and saw Jamie. I want to say probably 2 weeks after winter conditioning started. We had a period where we were allowed to go back home. I went back home. I'm like, I need some offensive line help.
I remember seeing you come back in.
Yep. I definitely wanted to get ready for that position. So Jamie was a huge one. Our head coach at the time, he was not our offensive line coach my freshman year, but he was the following year. He was a really big component in helping me prepare to start playing offensive line. I saw him a bunch of my free time, gave me a bunch of drills to work on my own, watch film together. And then even my offensive line coach at that time, he was a defensive line coach, but he still had a lot of viewpoints that really helped develop my game.
So you just brought up 2 points that we talk about all the time. One, you need to work with your position coach or whoever that guy is, watching film with them. If you can get opportunity to work, office hours with them, because after all, that's what they do for a living, right? They're coaches, and coaches like to coach.
Yep.
And if you're willing to go in there and learn, if they're a good coach, they're going to be willing to spend time with you and develop you and really get deeper into the game and teach it to you at that appropriate level. But the other thing you just said which is interesting, and we talk about this all the time, a lot of times you have coaches in college that are not experts at that position. They are managing that position, or they're getting experience at that position. And that's why, they manage that position to make sure you go where you're at, know where your protection is, know where you're supposed to, who you're supposed to block, whatever it might be on a specific play. But that's their job. Their job is to make sure you do your job. And sometimes what's lost in translation is, how do you do your job? And how do you do your job is a big component of how you get on the field. So, being a guy who's big and athletic, that they've now said, hey, we're going to take a shot with this guy. They have a vested interest in trying to help you, but they also have time constraints and limits to when they can be on field with you, all of that stuff. So as you start to transition, when did you realize, like, hey, this is the right place for me? Like, what was it, freshman year? Was it sophomore year?
So my redshirt freshman year, so my first year playing, our very first game was against Indiana State. So that's a D1 school, and we're a pretty small D2 school. And we got smoked. It was about 49-0. But that game, I did not let up a single sack. I didn't let up a pressure. So that was a pretty big game in my mind in determining that I wanted to play O-line. But it probably wasn't until my sophomore year where I really started like dominating in a sense that I was like, okay, no, I can do this. I not only can I do this, I love doing this.
So what's your size at that point as a sophomore in college?
Sophomore in college. So I'm still 6'6". I want to say I was probably around 305 around then. Maybe a little bit less. When I first gained weight my freshman year, I was about 295, but it was a really sloppy 295. When I got around to my sophomore year, I started to put on, like, I cut down my weight and then built it back up with more muscle. So I kept more of my athleticism that way.
Yeah. And so I think that's the tough thing is, like, as you're learning on the job, having that athleticism, I think that's what allows people to learn on the job. If you don't have that natural, knee bend and ability to recover, it's a really difficult thing, right? And so when we see guys transition to new positions in college, quite often, and that takes a special kind of person, because you're kind of on your own, and the team needs you, right? And depending on how they do it, and how they get you set up, there's some guys that have crashed and burned. I've watched it happen. And so the tough thing is then they're like, we're just going to get another guy in here and recruit another guy. And this day and age with transfer portal, it's even more volatile, right? Like if you don't put up or shut up, you're out. Like it's done. You're done. So as you start to progress, I start to hear, I believe maybe it was after your junior year or mid junior year, I get a phone call from an NFL scout asking me about what I know about you, right? And so what I found really interesting was they knew your background. They knew what you played. They knew you trained at elite. They knew they do their homework. Yeah. And the story is like, hey, this is going to be a dude. Like he's got a shot coming out next year, like as a guy that's going to have a high projectability. And you see that every year in the draft. Like there's a guy from a school that you're like, hey, Quincy, or there's someone on the East Coast. This past year I forgot the name of the school, but like a smaller school, and the guys that ends up becoming a household name in the NFL, and they get drafted, right? So your senior year, so you're entering. Like, is your mindset? Are you aware that there's teams looking at you?
So we're talking senior year,
senior
like final,
year.
final senior year. So at that point I was aware. The season before during spring ball, we had got an invite up to I got an invite up to a underclassmen pro day. So it was with the Vikings and the Bears, and they were like, yeah, we want to see how you run, we want to see how you do on this Wonderlic test, and we just want to see you in person. So I ended up going to that, and I'd actually pulled my hamstring right before, like 2 days before. So I run my 40, do my Wonderlic test. I think I got a 32 on that, which decent score.
Yeah. Hey, you went to SLU.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That helps. That helps. Shout out to the U High. So I do go on the Wonderlic test. I measure pretty well. I got the 7-foot wingspan, 10.5 hand, 6'6". They're liking what they're seeing. So
10.5 hand is huge.
Yeah,
that's
got
big.
Some quad
that's really
hands.
big. I mean, like there's linemen that have 10-inch hands or 9.5-inch hands. I mean, and hand size is critical.
Yeah, very critical.
Very critical.
So after we get back from that, I want to say maybe a week later, I start getting calls from, it was either 3 or 4 agents. And like at this point, I didn't really understand what was happening. They basically told me, they're like, hey, there's some buzz around your name. We'd be interested in representing you. We just want to introduce ourselves. So the very first guy that told me that, and the guy who actually ends up being my agent, he had DM'd me on Instagram, and I said, I'm not looking for an agent right now, because once again, I didn't really know what was happening.
Yeah, right. Out of the clear blue.
Yeah, just out of nowhere. So that starts happening. Start getting more calls from a few agents. Then eventually, what happened? The Shrine Bowl list.
Well, hey, real quick, that phenomena of those guys starting to call you. What happens is your name starts buzzing. The scouts start talking to. Oddly enough, they're friends with a lot of the agents, right? Because that's a really interesting system with the agents and the scouts. They know each other. They tip each other off to certain things. And so clearly those guys got tipped off to you as a guy like, hey, you probably specialize and you've got guys that have been in this scenario before. You might want to talk to this guy, right? His name's starting to kind of, get hot. So that now you fast forward, you got the Shrine Bowl.
Yep. So I'm about to go work at a pool as a cash register for my summer job. It was just something I do up in Quincy that I make a little bit of money. It's like 6 a.m. in the morning. I have like 5 texts from my coaches. I got like 30 Twitter notifications, or 30 plus, whatever the top number is. And they're telling me to go look at Twitter. I go look at Twitter. I'm on the Senior Bowl list for Reese's Senior Bowl, and then I'm on a few weeks later, or a few days later, I don't remember. It was the Shrine Bowl list came out. I was on the top 1,000 for that list as well. So now I'm really starting to be like, okay, there's something going on here. Yeah. Maybe there's a little bit of interest. Maybe it's not just fake news.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that happens, and now you're entering your senior year, right? You're feeling pretty good. You guys got a good team. Got a quarterback from the St. Louis area running all over the field, and Tion Harris, who's still playing professionally. We'll have to get him on here and talk with him. He's playing professionally overseas, and sounds like he's living life over there.
He's in Poland right now.
Yeah, he's just doing great. So, we got some good Tion Harris stories, boy, from back when he was a kid and doing 7-on-7 and just through high school, just a absolute dog. But so yeah, you get into your season. How's everything go your senior season?
Season starts out pretty well. Scouts are coming through. I think we had every scout except for one team. I want to say it was the Raiders come through that year.
They miss guys all the time.
Yeah. So scouts are coming through, and my first 3 games go really well. I do what I'm supposed to do. My 4th game, the week of practice, when scout team's going against you and you kind of have a little bit of buzz around your name, they try to go a little bit harder against you. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
One of the kids, one of the freshmen, broke my thumb on accident. I forgot what happened, but he broke my thumb during practice. So that next game, I don't even remember what hand it was. It might have been my right hand. I was trying to block, but I'm like using my palm, and I'm like trying to use my thumb, but I can't grip onto anything with my thumb. And it wasn't as dominant as I wanted it to be. I didn't give up any sacks or anything, but still, it could have been a better game.
You weren't manhandling people.
Yeah, exactly.
Tough thing is those, and this is again another thing when you're in college. Scout team guys, there's issues with the scout team guys sometimes, right? And so they call them like Tuesday or Wednesday All-Americans, and guys try and do things, and they're trying to earn their keep and make their mark, but there's a time and place to do that.
Yep.
And hurting guys that have potential NFL potential is probably not ideal. Hitting the quarterback will get you kicked out of practice. All those things that you just got to be cognizant of, and I think a lot of players got to know that, like, you don't just win it in reps and in a practice or a walkthrough period or a half speed or half line, whatever you're doing. Like, you have to know the time and place, and I think that's something you learn as you're in college, and that's what you said. He was a freshman.
Yep, he was a freshman.
Yeah. So, but again, you have two. If you have both hands and you full use, you're able to do what you need to do, and so limiting one hand is probably not ideal.
Just along with that, though, I will say, I feel like most coaches would rather have somebody who's always going hard than doesn't give effort on scout team. Because if you're going to be on scout team, you should still be giving effort 100% of the time.
You and I know, and this is something that, whether you've played college football or not, but you probably would not know this if you hadn't played, but there's a lot of brokering that goes on between players, on the offensive, defensive sides, right? Yeah. So there's guys that go hard every single play, which you respect, like, okay, hey, and you know what you're going to get.
Yep.
And there's other guys that are trading with each other, like, hey, man, don't do, and so there's guys that can definitely control reps, and so that's a tough thing because, on your side, in your perspective, you want to get better, right? You want to stay healthy, but you want to get better, and you want to stay, you want to stay sharp. So iron sharpens iron, right? So if that guy's giving you good reps, you're going to get better reps, and be prepared for the game. Yep. So you kind of progress through. You got some injuries, so you're a lingering injury in your hand, probably for the first 3-4 games.
Yep. So that was about probably 7 games in. Get to about game 8. The same scout that contacted you, he was a recent Senior Bowl scout, and he comes to our game that's in the St. Louis area, and he's scouting for the Senior Bowl as well as for his team. And so during that game, actually, that's probably one of my favorite games of my career. We're down 3 touchdowns at halftime, end up winning in overtime. The other team goes for 2. Great game. But so probably like on the second drive of that game, I got my helmet knocked off my head for the third play in like 9 plays. The rest of that game is probably the most dominant I've ever played.
How did it get knocked off?
Just guy putting his hand in my face.
Just pushing up.
Yep, just pushing up. Ref wouldn't call it. I kept going up to the ref. After that, first of all, I went off to the sideline because I had to come off.
Yeah.
My parents had a lot of friends in attendance at that game because it was my last game in the St. Louis area.
Yeah.
We had a lot of people in attendance. I said some choice words. I was yelling. I was hyped up. And when I got back out there, I followed through with what I said I was going to do. I started to get a lot of pancakes. Just leave it at that.
That's very good.
Yeah.
So, but again, that's the battle within the battle, right? And that good thing is when you got a hype and you got people talking about you, these guys, they want to try themselves, right, against guys like yourself. And so, sometimes that brings out the best in them. Sometimes it brings out the worst, and guys do stuff that they probably wouldn't do ordinarily, or they're just cheap. And unfortunately, that stuff happens. But again, you're bigger, stronger, faster, better skill. You just end up beating the guy, right?
Yeah.
So the game, you guys come back, you win. What goes on? What transpires there? So that's what game you said. Game 8.
Yeah, it's about game 8.
Okay.
So game 9, game 10, I don't remember exactly what. Our game 9 was against one of the top 25 teams in the country. We almost had the same exact thing happen where we came back. We ended up turning it over on like the 6-yard line. We would have tied the game up right there. Kind of put the game away. It was like probably like 5 minutes left when we did that. Next game is game 10. Game 10 was my 45th consecutive start, and about 15 minutes into that game, we run a perimeter screen, left tackle, left guard, getting out, going to block. And as I'm taking my kick set and transitioning into run out for the block, I don't even have anybody in front of me. I fall down. I'm like, one of my homies kicks me. Oh, well, I guess next play. We'll get him on the next play. I start trying to get up, and all of a sudden, my foot's not really like bending. It's not working. And I'm trying to move it, and it's not moving. I try to move my left foot. My left foot moves. I'm like, okay, why is my right foot not moving? And eventually, some of my teammates come and help me up. I don't know what's happening still. They over and help me to the sidelines. And actually, just kind of getting back to that point where you just said how sometimes going against top tier guys can bring out the worst in you. There's one guy yelling at me, "Oh, now none of these NFL teams are gonna want you." Yeah, so I'm like, oh, okay, so I'm injured. Something's wrong here, and I just haven't noticed yet. Everyone else has processed what's happened.
Yeah,
I haven't processed.
First of all, what a punk that guy is.
He ended up apologizing after the game.
Good. Okay, good.
And that's part of football, though. I feel like
there's a competitiveness.
Yeah.
But you know what? There's also the human side that's like, hey, man, I really wanted to tell people I played against you. Like that type of stuff where I enjoyed competing with you.
Yep. So absolutely. So there's no beef there. It's just like I just wanted to. It kind of felt like it related to that point you just brought up. But so I'm getting carried over to the sidelines. My left guard actually gets kicked out of the game too because he started saying some choice words back to the guy that was talking to me. So it was a double whammy for our team. We lose our left guard and left tackle at the same point. But as we get to the sideline, the doctor for the other team, because we're at an away game, they're looking at my foot. He's like, I'm not entirely sure, but I think your Achilles is torn. I don't know if it's partially torn. I don't know if it's fully torn. One of my teammates' dads was there as well, and he was a foot doctor, I guess. And so he took a look at it, said the same thing. That was actually probably the one game like within driving distance that both my parents weren't at because there was some big accident on the way.
Wow!
Yep.
So I did not realize that.
Yeah, they weren't there, so they're actually watching the stream, and all of a sudden they see I'm not out on the field anymore, and then they're looking for me, and one of my best friend's moms who's there, she calls my mom, and she's like, "Get the phone to your dad," because my mom doesn't really like stuff like that, so she's like, "Oh, I'll tell dad first." And they explained, he tore his Achilles. She gives me her phone, and so I talked to them.
Was there a lot of pain involved?
No, not really. It really didn't hurt at all.
That's what's crazy.
Yep. It felt like
it's a major injury. Yeah, that is a major injury.
Yep.
So what's your thought process at that point?
I had no idea what to think. So the first thought I had was we gotta be strong. Like my mom and dad, my mom sounded like she was crying when I was on the phone with her. And I'm at the point where I'm kind of freaking out a little bit because my parents are freaking out. And so I tell them, I'm like, I know this sucks for you guys too, but I need you guys to lock in for me because I don't know what I'm gonna do if it's all of us freaking out about this.
Yeah.
So, and they did just that. They locked in. They're like, all right, hold up. We're gonna be in Quincy. We're gonna meet you guys there when you get back. We're gonna go to the doctor with you in the morning. And they just locked down.
Figured out.
Yeah, I don't know how they acted when they got off the phone, but on the phone, they were my rock.
I cannot imagine that phone call and then and then being a couple hours away, so you got to drive. It's just so you clearly tore your Achilles.
Yep.
Then the process is surgery
Yeah.
and
Yep.
rehab,
Yep.
which is poorly timed because got the Senior Bowl. You got all these things that you're supposed to be doing that are just part of the process. It probably would have been a combine invite, right? Like all those things, you're now like rehabbing during. So that would have been what, November or October when it tore?
November 11th, I want to say.
Okay, so then now you're looking at that stuff. You got November, December, January, February. I mean, you got what, 4 months,
Yep.
3.5 months, before everything is rocking and rolling. And how long is the recovery period for an Achilles?
9 to 12 months.
Yeah. That does not work on the timeline for many injuries, right? And so we saw last year in the Super Bowl, right? There was a guy who tore his Achilles running out in the field.
Yep.
And it is shocking that injury, how it occurs. They say, if it fully goes, it sounds like a bomb going off, right? Like a shot.
Yeah.
Because it's just such a big, tendon that pulls from the bone and rolls up basically back of your leg.
Yep.
So you do your surgery, and then you rehab, and then you start to kind of get yourself moving again. And in that time, obviously teams know, but it's kind of back to our earlier conversation. The NFL teams are just looking for ready-made stuff too. They don't want it to be real complicated.
Yep.
More complicated it is, the harder it is for them, right? So what do you start to hear? What's the, or does it go quiet?
So yeah, it's on and off. So when I'm up at the Shrine Bowl, they have a designated period where you literally are just in like 3 to 4 rooms for like 4 hours, just talking to teams. And so in some rooms, and there's like 5 to 6 teams in the room. In some rooms, I talk to every team. In some rooms, I don't talk to any teams. So it's kind of hard to gauge where we're at, especially when I'm walking around the Shrine Bowl with a boot on. Yeah, that probably wasn't.
And trying to look as fluid as you possibly can, like oh, my foot feels great.
Yep, and it really didn't feel bad at that point, honestly. If it wouldn't have been detrimental, I would have walked around with my in my shoes.
Really?
Yeah, because it didn't hurt, especially not at that point. Now,
what was the Shrine Bowl? What is that? Is that in February?
Oh yeah, February. Yep.
So, what you got going though. So you got these coaches and scouts that are, now starting to kind of kick the tires. Obviously they know you're hurt. I remember talking to the area scout for the Rams, and he made a comment about, looking at you side by side with, I think, whoever the top tackle taken that year was. He says he looks at, and he's like standing side by side, like you couldn't tell, like there's athletically and on the hoof, you guys look. You may be even a little bit more impressive. Yeah. So you hear that, you see that, you will see these guys competing there, and for a fact you can do it. That's probably no worse feeling than that. Yep. And so, unfortunately, that's just part of the game, right? And things happen. So, so you go through. Obviously, you can't do a pro day, you can't do your combine. You just rehab. But how fast do you get done with your rehab?
So I actually technically did the pro day. I did my bench press. Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Just didn't do my running. And that's where the area scouts saw me at, next to the tackle up there.
Okay.
Yep. What was the question?
So now after you have the your pro day period, if you will, because at a pro day, just for people who don't know, they're gonna do their 40, they're gonna do pro agility, broad jump, vertical leap. They'll do like a 60-yard shuttle. Sometimes they do position drills. They do a bench press. They usually do the testing first and then the position drills after. And what pro day did you go to? Is it Northwestern?
Yep, Northwestern.
Yeah. So, and they had a big tackle that year. I don't, his name, probably. I don't know his name, but they had a high-level tackle that was coming out. So, tough thing is that you're not in control of any of this process, whether you're able-bodied, healthy, or not, right? Yeah. And we've seen this 1,000 times with kids where it's just very difficult to even know what's coming. But the only thing you can control is what you're doing to prepare, right? And so and then put it on display when they come see you. So NFL draft occurs, I go into it and I've been told like, hey, look, there's a good shot that someone's going to either pick him up late round or early because what had you heard projected prior to you getting hurt? Do you know?
I hadn't really heard much about projections. I was definitely paying attention to like what the teams that were really interested in me, what picks they had. I'm like more towards the end. I'm like, okay, see, I'm gonna really pay attention during those days. My agent was under the impression that we'd probably start hearing stuff on the second day, and then third day would probably be if I got picked up, that's when it would be. He said it was hard to tell with the injury though.
I had heard the late second day, early third day is what kind of what I was hearing. So, and you never know that. I will tell you, you hear that, and then guys go way earlier, and then you hear that, and guys don't go at all. I mean, it's a bizarre process. So, and there's so many variables. Like you think college recruiting is difficult? Yeah, I mean, short of the top 50 guys, like it's a nightmare because everybody's got different needs, everybody's got different wants, and then how they all slot, and they got different number of picks. So and they have conflicting viewpoints inside their scouting realm, player personnel realm, and their GMs and coaches. So it's a really interesting, and every team's a little unique to each other. So they're not all the same, and how they bake the bread is a little different with each other. So so the draft comes and goes. Don't hear your name called, right? And you know that there's a real possibility that was going to happen. Obviously, you're not hurt. So psychologically, what does that do? I mean, how do you stay positive? I mean,
I stayed positive by going to get 5 guys and a vanilla shake that night.
There you go.
That is what I did to stay positive. I stayed in my circle, talked with them. Family kept me up. My close friends, they're a really good job of keeping me up. They're like, it's going to happen. Just wait on it. And that's exactly what I did. I kept doing my rehab, kept working out as much as I could because I was still not in the boot at this point, but I wasn't cleared to fully go by any means.
Yeah, but I would see you run a little bit. I'm like, come on. I mean, like you're getting yourself close.
Yep.
And then then the tough thing is you have the rehab shape. You're getting back in from rehab. You have this getting back into football shape.
Yep.
Which is a whole nother thing, right?
Completely
and then honing your skills at the same time. So it's a really and then getting your body and maintaining the weight density that you need to have, all of that. So you go through all that, and then the next phase in the process is kind of waiting to hear if any teams are going to pick you up, right?
Yep.
Or, bring you in. So who do you hear from?
So I heard from 2 teams. I heard from the Rams and I heard from the Panthers. Rams were like, okay, once you're and the Seahawks as well, actually. So the Seahawks and the Rams both said, once you're ready for a workout, we will bring you in for a workout, and then we'll see where you're at, which I didn't even understand how the process of a workout went until after my time with the team I did sign to. But so I did end up getting the Panthers brought me in the week after the draft, and it was just for an interview. They knew I couldn't do a workout or anything. End up meeting with the offensive line coach, and he does a little interview with me. We talk, and he's really interested in how far along I am in my rehab because he likes my size a lot. He likes the raw talent on film. He says I need a lot of technique work, but he thinks his whole idea is that he can give that to me, which he gave me a lot of technique work in the future. Let me tell you.
Yeah. So and that's where those guys, I think, of the position coaches in the NFL, the O-line and D-line guys probably do the most coaching of their guys, right, and bringing them along, right? There's famous stories of O-line coaches over the years and that really were like the stalwarts of particular systems that develop guys to their style of play, right? And so they double back on you, right? And so they come and sign you and you spend time there and going into the NFL not healthy or still recuperating is probably one of the hardest things you would ever have to do. I mean, I can't imagine it, but going in fully healthy is hard enough. I mean, we see guys that are able-bodied, full tilt, best shape they've ever been in, best skill sets they've ever been in, and they turn around and they're home in a day. Right? It happens. I mean, and that's no slight on them. It's just it wasn't a great fit, or they found someone that they needed more. So how's the experience? You go to which team?
The
Pa-
Panthers.
Panthers,
With
right?
Panthers,
So
yep.
yep. So Carolina Panthers.
Yes, sir.
What was the process like? You get there, probably very nervous, I would assume.
Oh yeah, so super nervous.
And how many months out are you at this point
6, maybe 6, 7
on a 9 to 12 month surgery?
Yeah, yep. So I get back. I actually, so they called to sign me while I was at the airport, headed back to St. Louis for graduation. So they're like, "You're injured. You don't need to be a rookie minicamp. It's fine. Go graduate." I go home. I graduate. I come back. I'm 3 days behind. All the other rookie linemen, they've been had a chance to kind of get in the playbook, see how stuff works, and they've physically got to do stuff. My first physical thing was rehab. I spent the next 2 months doing rehab, doing all the weightlifting, and then also all the classroom stuff. In terms of picking up the football, like the mental side of things, that was probably the easiest part for me. Actually, no, rehab was the easiest part because it's working on your body.
Yep.
But then the mental side of the football thing was also that was coming along pretty easy. I was doing pretty well on the classroom side of things, and that's what I did for the next 2 months. And during the little off period, I got an Airbnb up in Charlotte so I could stay up there and keep doing rehab and make sure I was ahead of things. And probably like 3 days before we were about to start training camp, we went to the doctor and I got fully cleared to do everything. Now, I probably wasn't 100% healthy when I was fully cleared,
Yeah.
but I was ready to go in training camp, and I knew it was go time. Like we got to start going. We got to start getting it going now.
So you're feeling better, but you're probably not where you know you need to be.
Yeah.
So how does training camp go?
So the biggest thing for feeling better and not being where I want to be is one of my biggest assets is my athleticism. My other biggest asset was most of my football career in Quincy, I was in basketball shape because I played basketball in all of high school, and it's really hard to get out of that shape.
Yep.
That Achilles tear was the only injury I've ever had that took me away from sports. So that was the only time that I've
deconditioned.
Yeah, deconditioned. And it was showing the first day of training camp, the first 2 days is just rookies. So it's just us for an hour and a half doing drills, and we were in Wofford, South Carolina, or Spartansburg, South Carolina. Very hot, very, very hot, and those were wild days. I was extremely tired throughout the day, and my coach obviously knew. He was like, "We're not expecting you to be fully conditioned right now, but we're going to get you fully conditioned," and that was great. So as we keep going on, training camp goes. I start getting allowed to start doing hitting stuff. So I'm allowed to do one-on-ones probably like a weekend, and then second week I'm allowed to start, or probably a week and a half, and I'm allowed to start coming in for 11-on-11 or team versus team. But I'm only going with the third group, so that's 3 plays at a time. But I can still feel I'm tired during this. Like that deconditioning was probably one of the biggest hits on my on football for me.
And the problem is like while you're rehabbing your Achilles, you can't like do the things necessary to get you conditioned for sport. And I think that's a really tough scenario, right? Because I mean, I was hurt numerous times in college, and I would every time, like I had a shoulder and a knee, and coming back, like, and they would beat the hell out of you in rehab, like towards the end, an attempt to get you ready to go back out to the field. But I remember one year I got cleared finally from an ACL, and it was in the winter conditioning period. And that day they happened to run. And so I got cleared, and the trainer says, "Hey, I'm just going to take you. You're going to do the workout they did today on their conditioning." Right. So he had me, the strength coach gave him it to him. So he took me through the workout, and it was like some absurd number of gassers that would have been hard anyway, let alone, a guy that's been on a Stairmaster and, a bike and a treadmill is now running on, grass, getting his butt kicked and damn near, vomiting because like you're not prepared for that. Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know that much can prepare you for it other than just doing it. And so that sticks out. So I would imagine, you're trying to catch your breath and run at the NFL speed, right? So that cannot be easy. And you still have a leg that's not fully healed.
Yep.
So go ahead.
was gonna say that. I also so I switched sides too. I played left tackle my entire collegiate career. First snap at with Carolina was right tackle. So if you know a lot about O-line, flipping your hips, like if you're playing with your hips rotated one time for like 6 years, which is what I was doing, and then out of nowhere you just switch to the other side. That it's a big difference, honestly.
Stance is different.
Yeah.
Releases are different. How people work against you is different. Like, yeah, it's different. It's like ask a quarterback to throw left-handed if he's been right-handed. It ain't happening, right? It's really difficult. You got to work on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how does training camp progress?
So we're probably in about week 2. We have our come back home where we go to the stadium, and I think it's called Fan Fest. So we have that. Practice doesn't go great. I get beat. I get beat once in one-on-ones, and I kind of let that start piling up. And I think I lost like 3 in a row and ones that day because my coach kept asking. He said, "No, go again, do it again." And I'm like, "All right, cool, I get another chance." But I was still in my head about the last rep, and I kept letting that build up on itself. So that day was kind of rough. And then probably a week later, so right before we go to do our co-practice with the Jets, that is the day before the Jets come. In fact, the Jets are already in town because I have a friend that's on the Jets as well. They're in town, and that was the day I got cut. So that was I want to say like 2 days before the first preseason game.
Yep. Which is brutal, right? But here's the thing: you've seen guys since you've been there getting cut, and bringing guys in constantly, right? We talked about it earlier, like this phenomena, outside of training camp period, where guys every Tuesday are going in and working out at NFL facilities. Like they're bringing dudes in, whether they need them or not, right? And they're kicking the tires, putting them in reserve, and all that. So, what's your mindset when it finally happens, and you're like, oh my gosh, like upset,
oh, definitely upset. So first of all, just being in Spartansburg, I drove to training camp from Charlotte, which is only like an hour and a half. But being in Spartansburg, I basically had to go home, like get home in the next 2 days. I had to leave training camp that day. So I had a 14-hour drive home. Thankfully, they paid for my hotel in Tennessee and all my gas and all that stuff. Like they would pay for my flight if I didn't drive. But I had a lot of time to think about what had just happened. So during that time, I'm like, okay, I got to get in shape. I got to keep working on my skill. And actually, the first thing I did on my way home was I set up a workout with Jamie.
Yeah. I mean, but that's the normal response of a guy that's a competitor, right? Get back to the drawing board. You can't feel sorry for yourself for all that long, right? So you come back to town, you're working out, getting ready, and just preparing. And then it's kind of like, okay, the NFL season gets rolling, and you just got to keep your name in the mix, right? So what goes on from there?
So actually, it's even before the NFL season gets rolling. It's 2 days. I've been home for either 1 day or 2 days. Vikings called. The Vikings want to work you out. Cool. Go to the Vikings. Kind of same thing. You're not in great shape right now. We like how you look, but we need better shape. We need you to be ready for these preseason games. Okay. Go home. At the airport to go home, Green Bay calls. Okay, we're going to Green Bay. Go work out for Green Bay. Still, obviously, I'm not in shape a day later.
Right, you just had a 14-hour car drive home.
Yep. Well, and then still the deep
and then a flight.
Yep. So Green Bay. I'm sitting in the lounge in Green Bay's lounge with all the other guys that did the workout. No one got signed that day, and me and another guy both basically talked to our agent at the same time, and we both Atlanta wants both of us to fly out, so we both go to Atlanta from Green Bay instead of going home. I'm going to Atlanta now. Same thing, not in shape. I finally get a workout for the Colts, and it's a couple days later. My agent asks me, he's like, "You're not going to be in shape, are you?" I'm like, "No. I mean, I
haven't had a chance.
I can't just force it." And he's like, "Okay, we don't want teams to keep seeing you out of shape. We are going to take some time off. You get to work. You get in shape." And during that time, it's kind of like a blank period. We don't hear from any teams, and we're not reaching out to any teams. And then the Edmonton Elks actually reach out for the new extended practice roster that they started last year. And so I go and do that. We look at it as a really good opportunity for me to get reps where I'm going live reps in practice. We're going to go ahead and do one-on-one. So I'm getting my technique down a little bit. I'm getting coaching points, and I'm getting in shape. I'm away from everything, so I don't have to worry about any like distractions or anything. It's just straight football and
Yep.
get in shape. So that was a really good period of time for me, honestly.
So, do you like Canada?
I did like Canada. Edmonton's an interesting city for sure. But I liked Canada. It was good. It was really good to get a chance to travel. Like I haven't really been outside the country that much, so to see, and obviously it's not too different than America,
Yeah.
but to see a different culture is still
Definitely
awesome.
different.
Yeah.
So then you come back home.
Yep.
And what happens next? Then you got another opportunity to play.
Yep. So next thing that happens is the Houston Roughnecks. They end up telling me they're pretty interested in me, and I end up signing a letter of intent with them. UFL merger happens. During the UFL merger, Houston Roughnecks the Roughnecks get discontinued. But
they dissolved them, right?
Yeah. So they get dissolved. So now I'm in the draft pool. I end up getting drafted in the 3rd round by the Brahmas. Signed with the Brahmas.
By Mark Lillibridge,
Yep.
who's a former elite football employee.
That he is.
Yep.
That's that elite connection.
Yes.
So I signed with them, and then eventually I end up reporting to training camp. I go train a few places before that. I go out to Florida to get my conditioning like all the way in shape.
Yep.
I train with an NFL coach on my technique, and I work pretty hard that week before I go in. I go in for about 3 days to Brahmas training camp, and we're finally doing all our house stuff, our physical, and all that stuff. And during the physical, doctor's feeling around on my knee. He's like, it's kind of swollen. I'm like, I mean, I play O-line. What do you expect? He's like, but it's really swollen. I'm like, I also had like a really hard week of training prepping for this. He's like, we just want to get an MRI. Or he has another doctor come in, and they're like, we want to get an MRI. All right, that's fine. I feel fine. Go get my MRI. I'm driving home. The team's driving us back to the facility. There's 2 guys. It was me and another guy that went. And they called me. The team doctor calls me, and he's like, how does your knee feel? I'm like, it feels fine. And he goes, are you sure? I'm like, yeah, no, I'm chilling. And he starts to explain everything that's wrong with my knee. And it's a list, and the list just keeps going on and on and on and on. And then he says, and all this has probably been happening for like 3 to 4 years. I'm like, oh, so my knee's been destroyed.
This is not an acute injury. This is a cumulative injury.
Yeah.
So what was his advice at that point?
Basically, stop playing football. He said, so I kind of got similar advice from him and a few other doctors.
Yep.
One of the biggest things that was wrong with my knee was there was no more cartilage left except from like one spot in my right knee. And
you didn't feel it either.
I didn't feel it. Yep. So
and there's not much they can do at that point either. Like it's just, It is what it is. And if you want to be able to walk when you're older, so how does that abruptness, you have this beautiful relationship with the game, right? It's never been, perfect, but it's something you've had and you've done well with it. How does that feel to be just kind of just essentially gut punched and told, hey, our advice is you're done, medically retire?
Yeah. So I was very, very hurt for the first 1-2 weeks. Like it was definitely a low point for me. Something that I'm glad I was able to get through fine. It was hard. There's nothing really more to say with that than it was hard. I had to lean on my parents, lean on my friends. They helped me get through it. And it kind of made me more appreciative of the time I did have for football. And it made me want to get more into passing on the knowledge that I gained while I was playing football at a high level.
Right. And I think that is the most mature component and way to go about it, because there's a lot of people that the game gets pulled away from them, whether it's through medical, whether it's through just they get cut and never get re-signed, whether it's through a whole thing. For all intents and purposes, you go to the Brahmas, you prove yourself, you do well, you're going to get pulled right back in by the same teams that kept working you out. They were waiting for you to get back in shape, which is very difficult to hear. But at the same time, there's a finality when you're told, like, hey, this is what you have to do physically. the people that I would say it's more of a curse, which sounds crazy to the guys that are still able to do it, that get cut and have no chance of ever playing. They just don't know it yet, versus a guy that has every opportunity ahead of him, still young, still athletic, still doing great. And then this bomb goes off and says, no, your knees are not good. Right. So the goal at that point is to keep your just stay positive, right? Because what else are you going to do? There's life beyond football, no matter what. We all have to retire from football at some point. We all, whether it's our doing or someone else is doing, the game ends. So, you then dive in, once you kind of get your feet underneath you, you dive in, we have you start coming coaching. And not a day have I seen you be a negative person. Not a day have I not seen you have a smile on your face. Not a day have I not seen you give full effort coaching guys. And to me, as a person that's done this a long time and seeing the different reactions to the game, I would just personally want to commend you, because it's not easy. I know it's not easy, but you have done it like a true pro and transitioned to teaching, and the kids that have been taught by you are so lucky. They don't quite realize it, I'm sure. And a lot of times perspective and time give that ability to see it, but their parents see it because they have maturity and time, right? And so what I've witnessed from you from a coaching perspective, very eloquent, very easily adaptable, and able to teach kids. I remember the first time I was like, hey, Jamie's not going to be here today. You got these guys. And it's like, but it's like you have so much knowledge to give, and now you're in your own world doing it. And so I would just like tell anybody that's out there, like, if you're looking for someone that's going to teach you and give you and have perspective on the game, BJ is the guy. We don't have him teaching anything he doesn't know. It's O-line, right? Just like I don't teach stuff I don't know. So he's in there doing O-line. But I think what's been your feeling of coaching and giving back to others?
Well, I love coaching just in general. It's way more fun than I expected it to be. Like I knew I was going to enjoy it, but it truly is a lot of fun. Seeing the kids that you're training like grow and actually get better. Like some of the kids I've now been training for like 2 to 3 months, like private sessions. You kind of feel like it's like your project.
Like, yeah, they're your kids. Like it's crazy.
Yeah.
Like and the private training, you build such a relationship with them that is solely unique. And I don't know if the kids even realize it. And so, like it's hard to build that relationship in football. Like because on a team, they're running and gunning. At college, there's competition. In the pros, there's competition. All those things. There's so many variables. But to slow it down and teach somebody what you know at an intimate level, to me, there's nothing better. I love it. Like I've passed up opportunities to do other things coaching wise. I still love coaching teams, and I've suckered BJ into helping me this offseason, and then into this season with our little guys, our middle school team. So, but you have persevered and managed. I just wanted people to hear your story, because everybody sees the glitz and the glamour. They don't understand the backstory and the heartache, the sacrifice. But I will say, you started in the purest form. You weren't cocky. You weren't bullheaded. You went into football and did the best you could. And then the game gave you and started putting you down the path of the highest level of the game. So for that, you should be extremely proud of yourself, extremely accomplished in your mind that quite so few people get a few people actually get to go into an NFL facility as a player. Yeah. It's bizarre. Like the numbers are so small when you boil it down. It is wild. Like it is like you assume it's thousands and thousands, tens of thousands, and it's a small number. So I'm just excited that we had you on today. We'll have to have you come back on, because BJ has also got he's into computer science and cyber what do you call it? Cybersecurity, all that. But then also he's a very accomplished, and we'll tag some of his videos on our Football 360 page. but he does a lot of social media videos and is excellent at it. I mean, he's got a gift, and the coaches and kids love working with him. So we'll put a tag on that, and then we'll collaborate some of the videos so people on our Football 360 page can see it. But excellent ability to transition and do things and not feel bad about what you did, because there's nothing you can do about it, and you just got to persevere and push on. And I think that's the beauty of life imitated in sports, and sports imitating life. Like, that's just kind of what it's all about. And so I'm proud to call you one of our own, and I am extremely grateful that you were able to spend time with us. So is there anything you want to shout out, or Instagram so people can follow you?
Oh yeah, my normal Instagram is BJ3RD. The videos and pictures that, like you were just talking about, that's JZL.FLICKS. And then also me and some of the topics we talked about right now is big on men's mental health.
Yep.
Me and my close friends have a podcast that's focused on men's mental health, and that's Men the Podcast, which is mastering empathetic narratives.
So you are a living, breathing person who's gone through that, right? And that probably helped you in your ability to cope.
Yep.
And mental health is such a huge component of really sports in general, and it can lead to some really bad outcomes if you're not careful, right?
Yep.
If your perspective is off and your motivations are off, it can really lead to some dangerous scenarios. So definitely give that a shout out or a look. And then I'm going to put it in our show notes as well, so you're able to go in and check it out. We did lose JP. He did not dip out. He did not have too many Mai Tais on the beach. His phone overheated. So next week, I think I'll probably shoot poolside rather than oceanside. So again, thanks for joining us today. We look forward to a new show next week, and catch us online at football360show.com, and then our Football 360 show on Instagram as well. You can also catch me at Elite Football on Twitter or X, and then Elite Football Academy on Instagram. Until then, we'll see you next week.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir.